Okay, let's see what we've got here. Now, since this was the first time I've brewed with sorghum and the first time I've done a decantation mash, things didn't go quite as smoothly as I would have liked, but at the same time, it didn't go so bad either. I kind of fumbled my way through it, and you'll see it in the video. But the beer turned out very cloudy, and there's a few reasons for that. Just time, I kind of rushed things. I didn't let it quite settle out as long as I would have liked, just because I'm very impatient. And the other reason could be that the mash didn't fully convert, and I didn't boil the grains enough so that the starch didn't gelatinize enough. Another reason could be that the grain was under modified and I didn't let it germinate for long enough. Okay, so let's open it up. It's probably not fully carbonated yet. Could use a little more time. I have to admit, the flavor is actually kind of bland, and that's to be expected because when I kilned the malt, I kilned it at very low temperatures. I was trying to maintain as much diastatic power as I could. So I cured it actually at 170 for 3 hours. A lot of the articles that I've read actually don't even have a curing phase. It's just they just dry out the sorghum at 50 degrees. Again, just to maintain the diastatic power. Not that pretty, very cloudy, and not much head retention, but again, it could still be carbonating. Okay, so it's a little bit tart. I can really taste the hops that I used. There's a little hint of a melon flavor. The original gravity was 1.049, and the final gravity ended up being 1.006, so it ended up quite dry, and that would give me an alcohol content of about 5.5%. So pretty decent results, but I think the original gravity would have been a little bit higher had the starches fully converted. Now, if I bought this in a store, I might be kind of disappointed. It's a little bit boring, and maybe a little bit too cloudy. Anyway, if you want more information about malting sorghum, I posted a whole bunch of articles on the blog. You just look in the information on malting and brewing under sorghum, and you'll see a whole list of links. So the rest of this video is all about how I made this beer using sorghum grains that I bought from the supermarket. Hey guys, so I had a pretty disastrous first attempt at making sorghum malt, so I'm going to try it again. The problem was the sorghum was too old. I've been using these Bob's Red Mill packages, and I just found one that I had left over from the first batch, and it says sell by April 2017. Now, I also went and bought some newer stuff, and the date on there says sell by April or March 2019. So that means the first batch could have been sitting in its package for about 2 years before I bought it. And you can see the difference. I'll give you a close-up. The old stuff is very dull and gray, and there's a lot of dark kernels which look kind of moldy. There's even some red ones indicating some fusarium mold. The new stuff is a lot cleaner looking. Now, when I went and malted this stuff, I went and bought 10 pounds worth, so wasted a lot of money on it, and it's not cheap. I ended up pulling out all these black kernels here. You can see a lot of the red ones. I'll give you a close-up on that too. and I figured it's just too unhealthy to use. I know there's a lot more moldy ones in there, and the problem is that the mold that can be found on sorghum can create something called aflatoxin, and that's extremely unhealthy. It can give you digestive problems, liver disease, and even cancer over a prolonged period of time or period of exposure to it. So that's not worth the risk, so I'm just going to chuck the whole batch. I'm also going to steep the new stuff in a diluted lye solution for the first 4 hours of the steep, whereas during the first batch I did it towards the end. So because you're germinating at such high temperatures, you have to disinfect the grains and kill as much mold as possible before germinating them. You're germinating them at temperatures of 21 to 25 degrees, which is just perfect to develop these molds, which can be so harmful. So we're going to soak it in a diluted lye solution for the first 4 hours with the idea that it's going to absorb some of that solution and kill the mold that's within the surface layers of the grain. I didn't do that with the first batch, and we'll see if that makes a difference. Okay, so when you're making the lye solution, you have to be very careful because this stuff burns. So I've got some gloves on. These aren't ideal. You want to be wearing something thicker like this. Also got some goggles, safety goggles. And I'm keeping everything in this area very dry. I'm making sure that no water whatsoever gets into my container here where I'm pouring the lye. Because you want to add the lye to the water, not the opposite. If you do the opposite, then you get splashing, and that's how you get burnt. So I've got my scale here. I'm going to be adding 2 grams per liter of water. I've got my water measured out. I'm using 4 liters. So I'm going to measure out 8 grams, and that gives you a 0.2% solution. There we go. Right at 8, right there. Okay. We'll take this and throw it into the water. And I should, once this is all dissolved, I should have a pH of about 11 to 13 if I've done it right. Make sure you use stainless steel or some other kind of container, but just not aluminum. It'll react with the aluminum and it's not a good thing. So stainless steel or some kind of plastic bowl or ceramic bowls, okay. So once it's in the water, it's a lot safer now because it's so diluted. If you can find food grade lye, that's the best. There's a lot of debate about whether buying lye that says 100% pure lye is safe to use. Some people say that it might be made in a factory that makes other chemicals, in which case you might get some contamination in there. But if it says food grade lye on it, that's probably the best thing to use. So I've got a pH of 12.3, so that's perfect. This kind of thing is actually used in the food industry, actually for making pretzels and other things. So I probably didn't need 4 liters, but I just wanted to be better safe than sorry here. So you're also going to see some leaching of the color as well. It's already starting to happen. I'm getting some yellow coloration coming out. And it kind of smells like Drano because that's what Drano is made of. So I'm going to leave this for 4 hours. Then I'm going to pour it out and add some nice clean filtered water to continue steeping. Okay, so it's been 4 hours and I'm now going to drain it and fill it full of clean filtered water and let it steep for another 6 hours. And then I'm going to drain it again, give it 3-hour air rests and 6-hour steeps until I've got a 42% moisture content. Just pouring off all the floaties first. Alright, so it's at 26.8 degrees Celsius. What's that in Fahrenheit? 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Great temperature. It's between 25 and 30. And it's starting to chit right now. Just came home from work and noticed all these little roots poking out. And that was after, let's see, I've got the 4-hour initial soak in the lye solution and then a 6-hour steep. After that, it had a 7-hour air rest and then another 6-hour steep in just plain water, and then a 3-hour air rest and then another 8-hour steep. And my moisture content is at 39%, which is good. It's a little low, but that's fine. It's just been sitting out here at room temperature for the last 8 hours. It's looking pretty good. It doesn't smell off or anything. I imagine it'll take another couple of days to really get it germinated. But so far so good. Okay, so after 4 days, the results are pretty disappointing. I don't think it's as bad as the first batch, but I'm still pulling out a lot of moldy grains. So basically anything that didn't germinate goes moldy. And if there's any little broken bits off the grain, that's going to go moldy too. So there's one more step I could try, and that is giving it another soak in the lye solution at the end of the steep as well as at the beginning of the steep. And then what you do is just rinse it off a bunch of times to get rid of the lye solution. That might help, but you know, lye is pretty nasty stuff, so I don't really want to be ingesting any of it. And so here you go. I'm still pulling out some moldy ones. I know there's some more in there. So here's another little interesting tidbit of information. The roots and the shoots of sorghum contain a chemical called durin, and when that's all ground up, it gets released into the mash, and when combined with the enzymes, creates hydrogen cyanide. So you got to get all of this stuff off. You got to get the roots off, and got to get the little acrospires off. Otherwise, you're ingesting cyanide. Small amounts of cyanide, that is, but still, I don't know why the hell I'm brewing with this stuff at this point, really. So I've got a sieve here. I'm just going to try and I can rub all this stuff out. Now, I tried to do this after I had kilned the sorghum at 50 degrees without curing it, and the roots just wouldn't come off. So I actually put it back in the oven at curing temperatures for 170 for 3 hours, and it seems to have helped. It makes the grain a little bit more friable, and it makes the roots a little bit more brittle, so they'll fall off. Okay, so another problem with sorghum is that the starch actually gelatinizes at a higher temperature than barley. So what this means is you have to do something called a decantation mash. Basically what you do is you mash the crushed grains at 113 degrees so all the enzymes are in the wort. The wort is then drawn off, and you take the grain and boil it. Then you're going to add that back to the wort, and continue mashing at 149 degrees for another hour or so. So I've got about 3 pounds of my malted sorghum, and to that I'm going to add a gallon of water, and I'm going to be using this trusty old mash tun right here. Okay, my water's about 119, and I'm gonna throw in the grain. I've also added some rice hulls to this, about half a pound, just to make sure it doesn't get all stuck. So just added about 2 tablespoons of acid malt and 1/8 of a teaspoon of gypsum, and the pH is at 5.3. Alright, it's been half an hour. Just going to draw off the wort. It's sort of like doing one big decoction, where instead of just a portion of the grain, you're taking all of it and boiling all of it. So I'm going to add a little bit of water to this. It's going to thin out the mash a little bit, but I kind of need some more water in here. And the wort I've poured back in here. And once the grains start boiling, then I'm going to start adding them back and keeping an eye on the temperature, making sure it doesn't go above 149. Okay, so yes, the mash was too thick, started burning. It's all stuck on there. So I poured it into another pot, added a little more water, and see if we can't heat it up without burning. So that worked a lot better. I kept it at medium-high, and I kept stirring it, and it hasn't stuck to the bottom. It's just starting to boil right now. So I'll boil it for a couple minutes and then start putting it back into the mash tun. I added about a liter, maybe 1.5 liters. So the mash is going to end up being quite a bit thinner. Yeah, it's already 135. So I might have to let the grains cool down a bit before adding them. So I overshot just a little bit. It's kind of hard to keep track of. I'm at 154, so 5 degrees over, but that's alright. So I've just been soaking the pot that had the burnt grains on the bottom. They weren't really burnt, but just very brown and very stuck to the pan or the pot. And actually, I've tasted this and it actually tastes pretty good. So I'm thinking I'm just going to add that to my mash tun. I know it looks bad, but it's sort of like a roasted grain. It's going to add some color anyway. So it's been 2 hours and I'm not getting a very good reading with the iodine test, but I am getting a 10 bricks. So I'm going to go ahead and sparge it anyway. Okay, it's been 24 hours and we're fermenting nicely. The original gravity was 1.049.